We also have a private wealth division. This podcast is an outgrowth of what we do in wealth management to try to help people invest wisely and correctly. And clearly, Gary being, I'll make him blush, but a subject matter expert in the field of infobesity. He's published recent articles, including an amazing article in Forbes, which, Gary, I hope you'll at least describe a little about what that article is all about. I have read it, and it's very impactful. I'll say intimidating in a way, but with what's happening out there and the data explosion.
I don't know about that, but it's interesting, though.
All right, fair enough. But ultimately, I hope we can get to the point where we assess the challenge or opportunity here, but more importantly, what do we do about it?
That's it. I mean, that's, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to give the holy grail today. And Mark, talk about, you mentioned 4 pillars of wealth. So, just briefly, what are the 4 pillars of wealth? Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. The 4 pillars of wealth that really, I call it the 4-legged stool because it's easy to visualize that. So the chair or the seat of that 3-legged stool is your net worth. So that means your investable assets. Everybody knows what those are. But your non-investable assets is in combination, the 2 things are your net worth. And non-investable assets include your house, your jewelry, your collectibles, all those things that contribute to your net worth. So that's one pillar of the private wealth stool. Another pillar is tax planning. It's in investing, it's not what you make, it's what you keep. And taxes are only going one way, and it's not down. So it's really important that you do tax planning before you have a taxable event. I can't emphasize that enough. Anybody can do it.
Planning makes perfect, Mark. Planning makes perfect.
It really does, especially when it comes to taxes. Another leg of the stool is trust and estate planning. Now, you want to make sure ultimately that your net worth is going to where you intended to go when you pass. But before that, I use the description have a wealth moat around your net worth, because in America, anybody can sue anybody at any time for anything. So you don't want to create this valuable financial target on your back, and suddenly you get these lawsuits, many of them frivolous, to shake you down for your money. So you need to be able to protect that. And so tax planning, trust estate planning, and insurance. Now, I'm not an insurance broker, but I can promise you, done wisely and correctly, there's a certain type of insurance product that we deployed successfully at McKinsey Company when I headed up the global private wealth practice there. But it's another tax-deferred vehicle, just like your 401k plan is, your IRA is, your Roth IRA. Done correctly, a private placement life insurance, your assets wrapped inside of that are a deferred vehicle. You don't pay tax. So those are the 4 pillars.
So, Mark, you went to Harvard University and you got your MBA. What was it like at Harvard?
Well, I'll use a joke first. You can always tell a Harvard man. You just can't tell him much.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
No, that's a joke. But, for me, it was an amazing experience. It was an aspiration. I am a local Boston guy. I'm proud to say that, even though I haven't been there in over 20 years. But the people and the environment is really stimulating and exciting, and they truly believe they're going to change the world. Now, I haven't done that yet, but I'm still trying. And I actually believe, Gary, the things we're talking about today are transformative. They are life-changing. And that really is exciting and motivating for me.
Well, we look at it, Mark, and I've been involved in startups for over 30 years. I've been involved in 17 startups and several unicorns. I was on the original management team of Click Software, which was sold to Salesforce for $1.35 billion. I love artificial intelligence and quantum computing, metaverse, Web3. These are some of the technologies that are going to drive us to the future. Remember, intellectual capacity, Mark, is evenly spread around the world, but opportunities are not. We need to look at the challenges in front of us. Areas like quantum computers are incredible. And a quantum computer, Mark, will process information. If you compare it to a supercomputer, it's 100 million times faster. By that, I mean what would take 10,000 years on a quantum today would take 200 seconds. And by the way, these are real statistics from a company called Google. And we look at it and there's faster systems being developed. But the other challenge we have is with these incredible systems, with artificial intelligence, machine learning, and deep learning, come the issue of cybersecurity. It's projected between 2022, this year, and 2027 that Bitcoin can be cracked with quantum computers and artificial intelligence. So there's a great opportunity in front of us. We've got space travel. Our friend Elon Musk is talking about colonizing Mars. We've got the opportunity to be able to help us with the supply chain, which we've seen. We couldn't get a roll of toilet paper, Mark, during the pandemic. So here we are with quantum computers, and we couldn't. I remember myself, Mark, I was going out to a marine supply place because I know I knew they'd probably have some toilet paper. So we got to go down through and we got to help ourselves. We got to make this world a better place, and we got to do it in the right kind of way. So, I love the kind of things that you're doing at BPC. I love the idea because you're right about it. It is what you keep, but it's also about what's investable. What kind of opportunities are out there to invest in? And of course, you said artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning, quantum, Web3, the metaverse. You're right. These aren't just topics. These are some of the guideposts for our life going forward. So I do talk about infobesity. Infobesity, by the way, I got the term from Future Shock by Alvin Toffler. I read that book many, many years ago. And that term stuck with me because that's what it's all about. Think about your world, Mark. Think about the rest of the audience's world out there today. I mean, you've got I say this day in and day out. There are about 300,000 items that each person has in their own personal cloud. The entire web in 1996 was 257,000 websites. You, Mark, have more information in your personal cloud, the entire web. Why is this important? Because think about it. How many times in the last 2 weeks has somebody said, Mark, Nadia, Charles, Jerry, I've sent you a message. Did you get it? Where did you send it? I sent it to an email address. Which one? I think I sent it to your Gmail. When did you send it? I sent it 2 days ago. Will you send it again? I can't find it. This infobesity that's in front of us is creating great challenges. I say this time and time again, Mark, that there are 124 zettabytes of data on the planet Earth today. If we took DVDs or CDs, those old things, and we stacked them one on top of another, Mark, it would go 93 times between the Earth and the moon. There's that much data. We need to be able to cipher through that data. There are going to be two classes of society, Mark, the ones that understand data and the ones that don't. We need, in order to make this world a better place and solve the challenges in front of us, we need to have a grip on it. That's where these new tools like AI in different forms, whether it's unstructured, whether we're looking at unstructured data, where we're looking at accelerated artificial intelligence in areas like self-thinking, where basically it makes the decisions on its own, intelligent, if you will. Those new technologies are coming out. Most people don't understand the difference between AI and machine learning or deep learning. But what we do know is we have data in front of us. We need to have these intelligent assistants, the ones that can help us understand the data, kind of like your grandmother, Mark, the ones that love you and care about you and empathetic. At the same time, can help you understand whether it's a healthcare, whether it's what you should eat or shouldn't eat, what you should do in terms of driving. These intelligent assistants are coming closer and closer to us. Every day, Mark, that we have our phones in front of us, right, we get closer and closer to it because this is becoming an extension of who you are and the kind of things that you're doing. So we need these new systems that are going to help us deal with the immense value. Think about it. Quantum computers and artificial intelligence. Let's look at COVID. Many of the companies out there during COVID used artificial intelligence and quantum computers. I mean, it takes 12 years to come up with a drug. We didn't have time. The Spanish flu of 1918, over 4 years, devastated the world. We had to come up with something faster. And the great thing, Mark, is humanity responded effectively. We came up with a solution. We did vaccines for people. We changed the way we looked at it. As Steve Jobs said, we did things differently. And Mark, that's the way the future is from our perspective. And, if you look at it, the companies that are out there and this revolution that's taking place in areas like Web3 and the metaverse, this revolution is going to impact every one of us because it's breaking down barriers. Similar to when the internet was developed, DARPANET and Vinton Cerf, who was one of the co-founders of that, I remember him telling me one time he didn't really understand how wide the impact was going to be, but it was going to be wide. But we're in the same way today. It doesn't matter, Mark, if you're in Connecticut or New York. You can contact people in Africa today, and you can get them on a Zoom call or a StreamYard and broadcast. This opportunity in the digital transformation is where these opportunities are today. And I'm excited.
You mentioned the COVID vaccine and the breakthrough technologies that we use to get a product to market rapidly. So I just want to embellish on that point because it's near and dear to me on many levels. We have a client and they're called Sama Technology. And Sama was instrumental in helping Pfizer commercialize their nascent vaccine rapidly. And long story short, Sama is in the FDA automation business. Right now, the way drugs are developed hasn't really changed in like 30 years. So it's all manual, it's archaic, it's slow, and by the way, bloody expensive. And Sama has been working to address that with things like AI and machine learning. And today, they can literally cut out months and months of time just automating these manual processes. And Pfizer used Sama, and that's part of the reason they were able to get a drug through the FDA in less than 12 months. And if anybody on the call is from the clinical trial world or the drug development world, they'll realize how extraordinary of an accomplishment that is. So I've lived and breathed the impact that AI and machine learning has in one example, which obviously was a breakthrough example. And I'll just say a final thing. Pfizer loved that, I'll say, solution so much that former CEO of Pfizer is now on the board of Sama, and they did a financing in December where Pfizer's VC division wrote a check into Sama. So it's one thing to have a good outcome. It's another thing when your former CEO joins the board and your VC division writes a check. So that's more and more validation that Sama was onto something amazing, and it's AI and machine learning that delivered the solution. So I've seen it and I believe you. But, that opportunity doesn't exist today, at least within the Sama world. Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing, because I know you have your venture studio, and I'm all about actionable opportunities. So, you can say that, the world is getting more and more populated. Yes, it is. The world's getting hotter. Yes, it is. And we have more and more data. Yes, we do. But what do I do about it? And how does it become relatable to me? So you have your venture studios. Maybe you can connect those two dots for us.
Yeah, so it's not just the venture studios, GSD Labs. So we go around the world and we look at some of the top companies from around the world. We use our ambassadors in different countries. Today, Mark, we're in 49 countries around the world. We attend many of the top competitions, whether they're the AI World Summit, whether or not they're the South Summit in Madrid, online, offline. But the key is connecting the dots with those companies, because we can find those grains, those diamonds in the rough in places that you would never suspect, places like Nigeria and South Africa, Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, all over the world, because as I said, intellectual capacity is evenly spread. The actionable part is understanding how to be able to use those technologies to solve a problem. And you're right about it. Think about Sama. It takes 12 years to bring a product to market. You did it in 12 months. Sama did it in 12 months with Pfizer. So imagine, it's not just, Pfizer wanted to invest in them. Well, imagine how much money they made because they did it so much sooner. There's a great impact. And most importantly, the impact on humanity. How many lives were saved, Mark, because that came out to market? How much better people's lives were? How we got back to normal faster? So those technologies are out there. The key is having a 60,000 foot view and understanding what technologies are there, and then connecting the dots where they can fit and then where we can have the most bang for the buck. where they're interested in. For instance, farming 4.0, going from the field to the table. We're going to have to double the food supply to 2050 to feed everybody. And oh, by the way, we can't increase the number of cows because 26% of the pollution is from methane gas. We got to have plant-based protein, and we got to go down through and do it quickly. Look at the challenge that we have in front of with fossil fuels. We're going to run out. We need to look at solar technologies. We need to look at battery technologies. We need to look at wind, all kinds of different ways to be able to help us live. In another 100 years, when there are no fossil fuels, how in the world, if you're in Boston, Massachusetts, in winter, middle of the winter, are you going to heat your house? We can't cut down the trees. We need to have those trees to be able to create oxygen. We got to look at things differently. And now's the time for humanity to come together. These transformational technologies, even Zoom, Mark, and StreamYard was started in, 2018. So here we are in StreamYard, broadcasted around the world. Zoom, 400 million daily active users later. So we are now able to take care of, I call the collective intelligence of folks, but more importantly, to find those diamonds in the roughs. And those are the companies that we can go after to invest in. Those are the companies to curate. Those are the companies that are going to, as Steve Jobs said, make a dent in the universe. And I'm excited about it.
So Gary, just to build on that theme that you mentioned, lose my voice, sorry. You're looking at businesses spread across the world that, and I agree with you, talent is everywhere, but monetizing and commercializing those opportunities wherever they reside is a leap. It's a challenge. So how do you think, well, firstly, kind of a loaded question, but the businesses that you're working with today, are they pre-revenue, post-revenue? Where do you try to select your opportunities to move forward with? Because I think for this group who are liking what they're hearing, how could you not? We're talking about breakthrough technologies, but there's lots of, I'll just say, carcasses on the side of the road where people had a great idea, they couldn't get it to market. So how do you approach that commercialization opportunity with new companies that you're dealing with?
Well, you're right, Mark, because one of the things I look at is I look at the team first. What kind of team do they have in place? Do they have the grit to be able to pull it off? Do they have the passion, optimism, the visualization? Can they deal with the great times, and can they deal with the down times? But we also look for revenue. Are they revenue producing? Because if they are revenue producing, let's say a company has $500,000 in revenue, the chance that they have product market fit is good. Well, let's just say they're in Poland or Hungary or Indonesia, but they're ready to go global. They have the right kind of skill sets to do it. They have had some international exposure. Many times, Mark, the leaders of those teams have worked for international companies, so they have had some exposure. The thing they're lacking are the networks and contacts. They need the money to pull it off. Listen, MySpace and Friendster were before Facebook, or relatively the same time, and you don't hear about them at all today. You only hear about Facebook. And so on that side of it, you've got to have the grit to be able to pull it off, the connections to be able to get people to buy off. You're right about it. Having the right kind of VCs or strategic partners that can help you through this journey is incredibly important. Just like what you do. You need people that understand it, understand how wealth works, understands how investments work, understand how these companies can help make a difference, and more importantly, create value opportunities. So these are exciting times. And if it was easy, everybody would be doing it. But it takes time. You got to reach out to people. You got to go to their pitching competitions. You got to become a judge. You got to understand the content. You got to understand, is this good or bad? Is this interesting or not? You got to understand it deeply enough so that you can get people into, like a Ferrari. If I got a Ferrari in the garage, it's my Ferrari, Mark. But if I take it out on the street and people see it, then the neighborhood knows I have a Ferrari. That's cool if you just want the visibility. But the most important thing, Mark, can I get it on the track, and can I win Formula One? That's where it makes it interesting. And there's so many companies out there, and I don't know anybody that does it like us, that goes out, hand in hand and works with these entrepreneurs to help them. And we do it because we also want to find the most highly investable opportunities in the world and people that are making that dent, because we need it today. It's not a shotgun approach, it's a laser approach.
Well, I just want to, I guess, embellish on what you just said. A few things. Success doesn't happen overnight. There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears that go into that. And you have to hustle. So, yeah, you can find cool stuff, but it then boils down to execution. And it's really the business fundamentals of how you get a product to market. It is networks, it is contacts, and it is hard work. I would also just share with you a similar experience. One of our clients, we love them a lot. They're called Clario Vision. And at Bridgepoint, we won't do a deal if we can't add value. And much like what you're doing, our value proposition is really growth opportunities. And our growth play at a very high level is taking US developed technologies into the Asian market, which means for us, India and China. By the way, India and China are the second and fifth largest GDPs in the world today. At some point in the future, they'll be the biggest GDPs in the world. Well, how can you ignore those markets? You can't. But yet, there are a lot of people on the US tech side that pay lip service to those markets. They don't know what to do and get into those markets, believe me. So I use the analogy, if you don't know who the sucker at the poker table is, look in the mirror because it's you. And the same thing applies to those markets. If you think you can penetrate those markets walking in there, you're the sucker at the poker table. So Bridgepoint, we have offices in Shanghai. We have teams on the ground in Mumbai, India. We work deeply with those people and networks and contacts over there. And in the case of Clario Vision, we're in the process of launching a China Newco with the intention of taking their products into China. And just one quick aside, myopia, which is basically kids with nearsighted vision, it's more than that, but that's a huge, huge challenge in China today. I call it the tiger bomb syndrome, where basically the kids are studying till 9 p.m. at night. And then when they're done studying, they go on their phone to play their video games. So it's murder on their eyes. By the time a kid gets to high school in China, 90% of those kids have myopia. And you could say, well, wear glasses. No big deal. It is a big deal because early on, your eyes are still evolving. And when you have this disruption that occurs, it leads to some very risky and catastrophic outcomes later in life, things like detached retina and blindness. So it's not something to be taken lightly. And in the case of Clario Vision, they have a solution to that problem. So huge opportunity, huge market, and we're helping them penetrate that as we speak. So everything you're saying about helping businesses and entrepreneurs scale around the world is definitely near and dear to Bridgepoint, and I totally understand what you're saying with that.
Well, you know, the other thing is there are 1.4 billion people in Africa in 54 countries, and sometimes we don't think about it. And I know that we work closely. Nigeria's got 235 million people, Mark, and people don't think about, you know, Nigeria is really a hotbed of AI talent. There are companies there like Patricia and Flutterwaves. Flutterwave's $1 billion valuation today. So if we look at these kind of companies, there's so much talent that's untapped and so many opportunities. The largest population under 30 in the world is in Africa, the continent. You know, we need to focus on these opportunities. There's all kinds of minerals there. There's great opportunities to, you know, we call it banking the unbanked for fintech companies because people use their phones. They don't have computers. So what can we do to mobilize the opportunity to help them to be able to learn better, to be able to conduct their businesses better, and quite frankly, to be able to live better? And those are some of the opportunities in front of us.
Well, let me embellish on, I'll call it the crypto play in Africa. But before I go down that path, let's assess what I see as an additional challenge for the locals in those markets trying to commercialize and transact. The fact is, money has challenges associated with it in Africa. Firstly, there's lots of communicable diseases. And when you handle money, it has germs and it spreads diseases. So there's other reasons why going digital makes a lot of sense in that market. On top of that, there's, I'll call it the stickiness of trying to transact with fiat currency. So doing things digitally can eliminate all those headaches. And you might say, well, maybe the government won't like this. Well, the fact is, if you have a digital footprint, that's the best way to make sure everybody's getting paid, including the government and taxes, because it is something that can be monitored and followed. But for individuals, it opens up an unbanked market because these people haven't had the opportunity to use trade finance, working capital finance, getting loans to help grow their businesses, and this unlocks all that potential. So
you're right. It unlocks it. And what has to happen, it has to happen sooner than later. The one thing about America, Mark, is, we've done incredible jobs with technology. Look at magnetic core memory in the beginning of the revolution back in the late 60s, on Wang, 70s, and then mini computers, Digital Equipment Corporation. We've gone through the PC, the Apple back in the 70s. And people thought it was funny. Now the situation, it's a standard. We've created such incredible technology, and at the same time, Silicon Valley with Stanford University being a real hub for it. There's such an opportunity and a curation opportunity for those companies. And it's not about a place, Mark. It's about a mentality. We've got to permeate this around the world. You're right about India. By the way, we have good relationships with folks that have graduated from places like IIT and IIM, and we're bringing those technologies all over the world. It's an incredible opportunity. 1.1 billion people in a country. Well, think about it. You got China with over 1 billion, you got Africa 1.4, and you got India, the bulk, good part of the population from around the world. So my contention is we need to help each other more. We got to treat each other a better way, and we got to help each other succeed. I spoke at the United Nations a few months ago in October, and I said technology is a tool for peace. People can feed their families and take care of their families. They're less likely to do nefarious things for the most part. Let's create those jobs. Let's help us solve the global warming challenge that we have in front of us. I just talked to somebody from Switzerland. It's over 30 degrees C in Switzerland, where she is now. It's unseasonably hot there. Think about 26 states around the United States have had record temperatures. This is just the beginning. We got to work together to solve these complex issues. It's not about, how much oil is. It's about how do we eliminate it and use things like electric cars that are not, the electricity is not being produced by oil or gas or coal. It's about how can we use sustainable resources. And we're getting there, Mark. I'm really bullish about the future, but it's not about if it's going to happen. It's when it's going to happen. And it's got to be.
I agree with the optimism, but I'll also point out a couple obvious observations here. So let's look at the Biden administration when they rolled into office. They waved the green flag. We're going to get off fossil fuels and do all the things you said. But there's a transition period to get from point A to point B. And I don't think they fully appreciated what could happen in terms of, I'll just say, supply disruption. You can use the Ukraine-Russian war, but you've had a dramatic effect on inflation and gasoline prices because of what happened over there. And yeah, there's more to that story than just that. But to get from here to there, you have to have a transition. So you can't flip the switch. So,
exactly. And we had, and I agree with you 100%. I mean, if we had the Marcellus Shale turned on and the Keystone Pipeline, we wouldn't be in as hostages that we are today. And the situation, you're right about the transition. Maybe it'll take 4 or 5 years, but at least we wouldn't have to think about people freezing in the middle of the winter because they don't have enough fuel or they don't have enough money to pay for it. So you're right about it. We got to go green, and you're right. It's a transition. You can't just stop. You've got to take it over time. But the goal has to be that it needs to be sustainable. We got to make that impact on the planet Earth. So you're right about it. And, I'm not, I don't say anybody's to blame. I'm just saying the transition needs to be longer. When you do it, you need to have a goal, set it, and move it.
Well, I don't want to get too philosophical here, but I'll say in America, politically, we've anchored to extreme positions. So Democrats coming into office, go green, And I'll just say the conservatives arguing fossil fuel. There's a role for both approaches to get to a long-term solution that everybody can buy into. So it's about compromise and being sensible. And I'll just share with you just an anecdotal fact of what's impacting the German and European markets right now, which is Russia fuel. I believe that almost all natural gas that comes into Europe is to Russia. And they're afraid that come winter, they're not going to have any way to heat their homes. And, they're already in the summer taking cold showers, so they're getting used to what's going to happen in their minds come the winter over there. And it's serious.
I wouldn't be worried about the cold showers. I'd be worried about whether or not my pipes are going to freeze.
Well, that too. Exactly.
That's a deal. So we got to figure out, but it's, like we said, there's a transition period that needs to take place. It wouldn't be that hard to turn on in my opinion, Marcellus Shale and the Keystone Pipeline to try to, not be a political hostage and to get us through this transition period so we can all win, because nothing good's going to happen on the other side by cutting it off. So we need to think about this. When we do things, we got to think about the repercussions of what's going to happen. And I'm not sure we have.
No, I don't think so either, actually. But again, my nickname from my biotech company many years ago was Money Mark. So I want to, if I can, pivot to what I'll call investable opportunities. We've more or less agreed that the opportunities in terms of things like AI, machine learning, to address these huge global challenges today, it has a massive role to play. So, okay, we get that. So if you had an extra $1 million today, where would you deploy? What would you do?
Well, I mean, I am deploying it, and I'm putting it into companies like I2Pure, which is a molecular isolation of iodine company that's very exciting. VoiceScript is one of the is an investment. I'm looking at companies that are going to make a dent and take these, this challenges with data and synthesize it to make it easier for us to do something better, right? To be able to solve a problem with health tech. Robotics, think about electric cars, battery technology. I mean, I was with Magna. Magna is one of the largest contract manufacturers in the world. They make the Z4, the Supra, a lot of cars. Company out of Canada and Graz, Austria. And I was invited by their senior executives and board to see the cars of the future. And these cars, Mark, are like nothing we've ever seen. They're basically self-driving cars. And Mark, how often do you drive your car a day? Sometimes none, sometimes a half an hour, not much. You think about an asset, it just sits there and rots. Well, imagine if we had it set up so because they're self-driving, they come over, picks you up, takes you to the grocery store, takes you to the gym, reconfigures your stuff, now delivers Uber Eats, and it does it without anybody on board. They're moving around on their own. Think about it, how much more time that you would have, how much easier it would be, how much less risk. I'm not sure the insurance companies would like it because they're going to be a lot safer. But these technologies are really on the horizon. And, as Tesla's testing LiDAR and all the technology they have for self-driving today and safety, we're getting there. It's coming closer and closer.
Well, I want to take what you just said, and I want to wrap the investment framework that we advocate. And by the way, this framework was really something that emanated from my time doing private wealth management for the partners of McKinsey. So it's a proven approach. It's frankly the Yale Endowment approach because the same advisory boards reside at the McKinsey Investment Office and the Yale Endowment. And their track record in investing is frankly state of the art. So my point is, when people invest, you can't have all your eggs in this tech basket. It's too volatile. Yeah, it's compelling, but it's risky. So one way you deal with risk is through diversification. So never have all your eggs in one basket. But at a higher level, you should never have all your eggs in the equity basket because they go through boom and bust times. God knows crypto, we've seen that. We've been in a crypto winter since October was the peak in crypto, and it's been a steady decline down, although it seems to have bottomed and it's moving up a little bit. So that's the crypto story at the moment. But investing the way we advocate, which we know does work, 40% of your assets, only 40% are in what we call equities, both listed and privates.
Mm-hmm.
So everything you're talking about falls in that bucket. An additional 30% is what we call market neutral hedge funds. And by the way, those market neutral hedge funds do really well in times of equity disruptions. So from January till now, we've had a peak to trough decline in the S&P of 21%, and 20% or more is what they call a bear market. And right now, the S&P year to date is down about 14%. So it's come back. It's not back to where it was Jan 1, but it's not as bad as we started. But net, we believe having, I call it hedges around that core portfolio. So in market neutral hedge funds, Ray Dalio's Bridgewater for the first 2 quarters of the year is up 32%. Why? Markets dislocate. It gives big trading operations ample opportunity to do trading around what they consider mispricings. So that's where the 30% comes in with our approach. Now,
well, that's a great number, 30%. That's a great number, Mark.
That's a 2-month number. That's not even annualized.
Now think about that 2 months number, 30%. That's incredible in a down market. That's almost like being Nostradamus, Mark.
And then on the inflation sensitive side, because these are paper assets, and when you're in an inflationary period, which we're in one now, people are debating how inflationary is it. I love when the Fed said transitory inflation, which was a new word I'd never heard before, but they're not using it anymore because it's not apparently transitory. Point is, you want to have inflation-sensitive securities around these paper assets. So, as an example, we advocate the Goldman Sachs Commodity Index, inflation-linked bonds, real estate. Those are ways to naturally protect against your paper assets. And by the way, the Goldman Sachs Commodity Index year-to-date is up roughly 20%. And that's a great way to take the sting out of your equity declines. And then finally, inflation sensitive. So you either have excess growth and inflation or negative growth and deflation. So there's kind of two ends of the same spectrum. And we advocate owning 10-year treasuries. Why? When it's risk off time, what do people buy? They park their money in 10-year treasuries. So it makes a lot of sense to have that in your portfolio. And I think right now we've had a rally in 10-year treasuries. And you could say, well, why? Well, some people think we're heading to recession. And when you're in recession, what does well is 10-year treasuries, because that's where people park their money until they know we're coming out of recession. So that's the all-weather portfolio. And your solutions fit very elegantly into that approach. But you can see it's a very diversified approach.
Yeah, so, I agree with you. You got diversification's key. You got to go out there and diversify. I agree with you 100%. I have a lot of investments in tech, but I also own utility companies and other interesting companies too. So, but you're right about the 40%. The other thing is, if you don't invest and take some risk with these emerging technologies, you're never going to create the kind of wealth that you want. But it's not about just taking a broad approach. It's finding the right ones to invest in. The right ones are going to really help you move your portfolio forward.
There was an expression from back in the McKinsey days. I loved it. It was called reckless conservatism, meaning you got to take some risks or you're not going to get any return. That's how the equation works. And it was so important to ingrain that into people that we did not give monthly results of people's investments. We only let them rebalance once a year. So force them to think long term. Because if you study the markets on a daily basis, you lose sight of the bigger picture.
Yeah. And no, you're right about it. And you waste a lot of time and you get it's not worth it. So you're right about it. You got to go out. So you need trusted folks that can really help you move forward. And if you want to create wealth, you need people that understand it better than you do and have the time to be able to put on it. And
be in structures that avoid taxes wherever possible. So the private deals you're describing are extremely tax efficient, right?
Mhm.
So, stating the obvious, the stuff you're holding for more than 12 months on average, I'm sure. And if they're more than 12 months, they're capital gain. On top of that, there's something called qualified small business. And it's an element of the tax code that people probably aren't familiar with, but you get additional tax benefits if you invest in a qualified small business. So I'm not going to go into the tax code today.
Oh, I love that. That's great. So, hey, just you've heard it from Mark. I mean, Mark knows the secrets. These are the secret hacks.
Yeah, that's the secret sauce here. But point is, you're investing in things that have a high tax efficiency associated with them. I'll just say one more thing about that. There's something that Trump passed, which is basically opportunity zones. So they're targeted geographic areas that have additional tax benefits beyond QSB. And as an example, I'll call it the province of Puerto Rico. The island today of Puerto Rico is an opportunity zone. So there are many, many people that have liquidity, that are rich. They're saying, why do I want to pay US taxes? I'm going to move to Puerto Rico. And to be considered a tax resident of Puerto Rico, you have to be there 6 months and a day. And by the way, I vacation in the winter in Puerto Rico. It's a lovely place.
Mm-hmm.
There's worse places to have to hang out for 6 months in a day than Puerto Rico, believe me. But basically, when you're there, you're effectively getting the benefits of being a U.S. citizen. Your Puerto Rico tax rate, don't quote me on this, but I believe it's about 4%.
Wow.
And you're not paying Fed taxes.
I think it's a great deal, Mark. I think it's, you know, the real estate in Puerto Rico is another opportunity.
Well, there's an expression, don't fight the Fed.
Mm-hmm.
And in this case, the tax code has a lot to do with where money goes. It's intended to be that way.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of things you can do to take advantage of sponsorship that the government's encouraging you to do. So again,
it sounds great, Mark. So, we're coming up to the top of the show, and it's great to be here today. It's great to spend time. It's great to, what are your closing thoughts, Mark, and how do people get a hold of you?
well, firstly, I think there's a final slide that has our contact information on it.
Okay.
But maybe here it is. So you see my email there. You can see my co-founder and partner Nadia Tien's email. If they want to reach you, Gary, either reach out to us and we can connect people to you directly. Here's your email, actually. So you're right here. So that's definitely an easy way to reach out to us. We have these podcasts, every Thursday. So there's always a way to get a hold of us. So I think we're very approachable and reachable. We do something, I call it, what do I call it? Basically our playbook. So people who want to get exposed to what we've done in private wealth, we do two things. We have an hour-long education session. So basically it's a program that I fine-tuned when I did this for the McKinsey partners. And just imagine, Gary, you're a McKinsey partner and you're sitting today in Wellington, Florida, which is, by the way, one of the most beautiful places in the whole world. So congratulations. If I said I'm from our investment office and I'm here to help you, what's your first instinct going to be? Bring it on or leave me alone?
Well, it depends on who refers you.
Okay, fair enough. I just call you up.
Well, no, I get lots of those calls.
Yeah, so, right.
I wouldn't answer. I don't have time, to be honest with you. I get 50 calls like that.
Right. So even though I'm on your side of the table, you don't want to talk to me because you don't know me and you're too damn busy. So those challenges were overcome by me by doing this 1 hour education session. And I would tell you, Gary, if you were a McKinsey partner, I have 25 years of McKinsey's R&D prowess and best practices distilled into an education session. You'll get something out of this. I know you will, because no one has not gotten anything out of this. Give us the hour, and then you can decide on your own whether you want to work with us. Mm-hmm. And we're here to help you. That's why I exist. So we offer that to people in the audience. And honestly, this year, I've probably done, 40 of these sessions. And we basically go through exactly what we would have done if you were a McKinsey partner, and it works incredibly well. So consider that a free option for people. And by the way, I always believe in taking on free options. So that's a little bit of how we can help you. And I guess before we sign off, are there any questions from the audience? Is there anybody that wants to chime in and ask a question?
Yeah, I don't see anything in the chat. It doesn't look like anybody has any questions. I'm sure they'll reach out. Hold on. Let's see. Listen, there are questions. So from France, what is the third pillar of the private wealth pillars mentioned by Mark at the beginning of the call? What's the third pillar, Mark?
Well, I don't know what order I went in, so let me just remind the 4 pillars in total, okay? So your net worth is, if you want to use an analogy of a 3-legged stool, the seat is your net worth. One pillar or leg of the stool is trust and estate planning. Another leg of the stool is tax planning. And the final leg of the stool is insurance. And again, for us, it's about private placement life insurance, which is something I deployed for the partners.
Okay, super. So it looks like the other questions were answered. That was Matthew. What are some good deals we can find right now for our investors to fight infobesity? Mark, you can take it from your side, and I can take it from my side.
Okay, infobesity, I think what we said is things like AI and machine learning. And to me, those in what we're currently doing at Bridgepoint, I call those an enabling technology that has multiple applications. So in our case, the question is, what investments are we working on now that have things like AI and machine learning utilization in them? So right now we have 2 deals that we like a lot. One of them is called Curio Therapeutics. It's basically a digital medicine. And you can say, well, what does that mean? So firstly, in the olden days, a medicine was a pill or an injectable, right? That's how you got treated. Well, we've been talking for decades about telemedicine and digital therapies. And frankly, the catalyst to bringing this into the mainstream was COVID, where people didn't want to go to the doctor. So now it's opened up a field that's had this potential for 20 years, and suddenly it's now realizing its potential. So we have a company that basically is a women's health business treating mental illness. And by the way, that's another thing that's been kept in the shadows, but for lots of reasons. And I'll just use, I think it's Serena Williams that came out with mental health illness. The famous swimmer who I just forgot his name. Also, so there's a lot of sports figures that have said, I have a mental problem, and it doesn't need to be stigmatized. It's an illness and should be treated. And the fact is, things like alternative reality and machine learning have a very positive impact on people with this illness. In the government, you've had military veterans coming back from the wars who had PTSD, and they've been treated with AR, VR solutions, and it really works. And frankly, left untreated, the situation can lead to things like suicide and all kinds of horrible outcomes. So anyway, Curio is a company we like a lot. It's already got revenues. They have announced they're going into India. We mentioned India on this call. 300 million working moms are going to have access to technology.
Wow, that's great.
So that's just one example of what we're working on. I'll just say one other quick thing. We have a company called G20 that's a platform play in the crypto space. So yes, places like Africa definitely are embracing digital currencies as opposed to fiat currency. And this company, G20, essentially combines FX solutions. So if you're transacting in Bitcoin, Ethereum, or whatever you're using, you still need local currency. Well, most of the exchanges are not built or set up to give you the local currency. They're just letting you transact and settling in dollars. So this company that's profitable in business for over 10 years does that, and does also things like options, where the crypto market today, things like derivatives and options don't really exist. And that's their expertise and skill set. So those are just two deals on our side that we really feel strongly about. What about you, Gary?
Well, we've got some incredible companies. We've got over 120 in our portfolio. So there are many of them. The one thing about them is they all have the potential to go global. They all, in our opinion, have the potential to become unicorns. So we're excited about literally all of them. I will say this, Mark, I got some good feedback that somebody just wrote me personally that the conversation today was brilliant. So did a great job on it today, and they liked the banter. So just FYI, that was from France, I believe. So
Okay.
Anyhow, I've got to wrap it up because I have another show at 1:00. So I got to go and get ready for the show. To everybody out here, we want to thank you for attending one more time. It's great to have Mark here. It's great to be here myself, Gary Fowler, and Mark Young. And stay tuned for another exciting edition of the Bridgepoint Capital Presents. We'll be back at the same time next week. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. Talk to you soon. Any questions, let us know. Take care of yourselves, everybody. Thanks, Mark. It's been enjoyable one more time again.
Gary, thank you. And thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye, everybody.